This conference will now be recorded.
Nobody's turn.
Welcome to our practice-based coaching overview. I am Lauren Williams. I'm one of the early childhood coaches, mainly in Region B and part of Region C.
Good morning, all. I am Andrea Lowe's. I'm the OG of the PVC. I just thought of that.
Hey, that's cool.
So, I should have used that in the other 5 sessions. I'm so bummed that I didn't. I am the original early childhood coach. I helped to create our PVC program here at Children First, along with Bridget Davis, 4 years ago now. Seems like forever ago. And I flew solo for a while and now have the great privilege of working with both Colleen and Lauren as of last year. So it's super exciting to have fellow coaches now. I work in the North County and the majority of my caseload is within Region A. And I have a couple of classrooms in Region B. Then we have...
And I'm Colleen Carpenter. I think everybody who is on this meeting knows me. My caseload is mostly South region, and then I also have a couple classrooms in C and maybe this year A as well.
All right, so we'll get started with their presentation and we'll start talking about what is coaching. And generally, coaching is a form of development in which a person called a coach supports a learner or client, sometimes called a coachee, and Kayleen will probably use this term with you, in achieving a specific personal or professional goal by providing training and guidance.
Where's the page? There it is. Okay.
This is mine.
It is yours.
All right. So in August of 2017, the Office of Head Start added a new standard. And the standard is a professional development based standard. Actually talks about training and professional development, and it reflected the implementation of coaching. It requires that coaching be individualized. So it's based on strengths and needs of individual staff. It's intensive, so that means that it is based on the actual need, the intensity of the coaching. So the number of times you're going to see your coach is going to vary depending on the actual needs in the classroom. It is also intensive, so it's tier-based. Sustained, so that means that it's going to be consistent through the whole year. It's going to happen in the context of your own classroom, which is going to make the most sense for everyone, and it will be very focused, so focused on specific goals that you and I work together to set. Professional development, the key part of that in the standard is the last statement there, where it talks about assessment results not being used solely to determine any punitive actions, and rather coaching would be more professional development.
So here at Children First, our research-based coaching program we use is called practice-based coaching, or PVC. And essentially it's a professional development strategy that's used in a cyclical process. So you'll see that it's a circle. And the outer circle is the collaborative coaching partnerships. And that's what the cyclical process will, that's what the cyclical process will be conducted under. You'll be building a relationship with your coach and working with your coach in order to promote effective teaching practices. In the cyclical process, there are 3 components, which are shared goals and action planning, focused observations, and reflective and feedback sessions. And this is all to promote effective teaching practices.
All right. So I am going to talk a little bit about what are effective teaching practices, okay? So they encompass a wide range of skills and strategies. You guys as early childhood educators adapt those practices to the age, to the development, to the individual characteristics, to the cultural context of each of the children in your classrooms. They are grounded in the relationships that you guys build with those kiddos in your classrooms, okay? They are designed to foster the development across all of the developmental domains of our high scope curriculum. And teaching practices can include things such as your schedules, okay? Your routines that you create in your classroom, how are those carried out on a daily basis? It encompasses how you manage your classrooms as well as how you handle those kiddos that have some challenging behaviors. Then the teaching practices and interactions are responsive to and build on each child's pattern of development and learning. So that has to do with the ways in which you individualize for the specific children in your classroom. Okay, so teaching practices can be individualized based on the children's needs. And then lastly, teaching practices are measurable, okay? And the tool that we use to measure the interactions and the practices that you have in your classroom is the classroom assessment scoring system, which most of you know as our class tool.
So there are three components to practice-based coaching. These are cyclical, so they repeat. The first is shared goals and action planning. So that's where we will get together, we'll review a needs assessment that you have completed for yourself. We'll set goals for coaching. And then from those goals, we'll create an action plan with steps that are going to guide the coaching cycle. We'll review and update those goals throughout the coaching partnership. The second component is focused observation. So once we have set our goals and created our action plan, you will set a time that you would like me to come in and observe you working on the practice that you've selected. I will focus only on that particular goal. It'll be very specific observation. I'll record information about the observation and then share that information with you. And then the third component will be where we get together and meet, where we can discuss the observation. We'll talk about how you felt it went, how I felt it went, and we'll just kind of reflect on all that feedback to decide what our next steps will be. At that time, you might, want some more resources provided. You might decide you want to try it at a different time. We'll make changes there to the action plan, and then the cycle will continue.
Okay, so I am going to talk to you about our tiers of support. So practice-based coaching is based on a pyramid model, okay? And there are 3 parts to the PVC pyramid, and it has to do with our tiers of support. So the tiers determine how often you will see your coach, okay, over a given month's time. So if you look at the base of the pyramid, you'll see that we start at a tier 1. So tier 1 are those classrooms where the teachers are higher level. Perhaps they have been teaching for a really long time. They are teachers who typically score well on their class assessments and have data at the higher end of the class scale. Teachers within a tier 1 classroom will be seen by their coaches once a month. So that includes one focused observation a month, as well as one reflection and feedback session, or coaching session essentially, with your coach every month. Then we move up the pyramid, and the next tier is a tier 2. And you can see that tier 2 teachers will be seen bi-weekly or every other week, usually turning out to be about 2 observations and 2 reflection and feedback sessions a month. Tier 2 teachers are those that typically score anywhere in the mid-range on their class observations. They could be a teacher with, some teaching experience under their belt. They have some pretty good skills. They'll just be working on, strengthening or deepening or extending those skills. Then we move up to the tip of the pyramid, and those are our tier 3 classrooms. Our tier 3 classrooms could be those teachers that are newer to the teaching profession, perhaps newer to Children First or Head Start, and things can be very different depending on where you taught prior to coming to Children First. They are also classrooms that may fall in the lower range on their class observations in a particular domain. So those teachers get a higher level of support, and you're seen weekly by your coach. So that would be a weekly observation and a weekly reflection and feedback session with your coach. Okay. So as we move forward, we determine the tiers of our classrooms based on a number of factors, okay? And what we're going to talk about next is one of those factors, probably the most important factor, and that has to do with the Office of Head Start Designation Renewal System. We call it DRS, and the DRS system is what the Office of Head Start uses to determine the quality of the Head Start programs throughout the United States, okay? And they have changed their DRS system about a year and a half ago. So a couple of years ago, you might remember that as a grantee, as an agency, Children First went through our class observations as part of the federal review process. So as a Head Start agency, we receive funds from the government, and thus we are required to show that we are a quality program in a variety of areas. The area that concerns us and concerns you guys are our classroom observations. They use the class tool when they come out and conduct these classroom observations. They happen once during the 5-year grant cycle. For us, it typically occurs during year 2 of our grant cycle. And so the last time we were observed in 2018 really, we get our scores the following year in 2019, because they take that whole grant cycle year and they go out and they conduct class observations and all of the grantees that are due for an observation in their year 2. And so we fell in 2018 during our grant cycle. They came out, they did observations, they wrap up the year, and in 2019, typically early in the year, January, we get our scores. And any grantee that fell within the bottom 10% of any one of the pre-K class domains had to go into DRS, right? Or as you probably know it, recompetition. You've probably heard that word. In 2019, that's where we as an agency found ourselves, because the classroom organization domain put us into recompetition. We fell into the bottom 10% of the other grantees that were observed at that time. Luckily, right when COVID hit, they finally determined that they were going to follow through with the new rule. They had been pushing for this new rule for a couple of years. Their thought was that determining the bottom 10% wasn't very fair to Head Start programs, because that bottom 10% changed depending on the scores of all of the grantees that were observed. Nobody could tell us what that bottom 10% was going to be, okay? So they had been pushing for this new ruling, and shortly after we entered into DRS, we were able to be removed from DRS because of the new ruling. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is that new ruling. So when they changed the system, the Office of Head Start came up with two different thresholds. They have a quality threshold, which is what we're going to talk about first, and that's what you guys see on the screen right now. So the quality threshold represents the Office of Head Start's expectations for all grantees regarding the quality in our Head Start classrooms, okay? At this time, early Head Start is exempt from taking part in the federal review. They only conduct class observations in our Head Start classrooms at this time. Doesn't mean that some years from now, they might not change their minds and decide that they're going to observe early Head Start too, but right now it's our Head Start classrooms only. And so they set these quality thresholds. The quality thresholds are what they want grantees, Head Start programs to strive for, okay? This is best practice. So for the emotional support domain, they are looking for grantees to strive for a score of 6 out of 7, okay? Class tool is based on a scale of 1 to 7. The emotional support domain is your positive climate, your negative climate, your teacher sensitivity, your regard for student perspective dimensions, okay? They're also saying that grantees should strive for a 6 out of 7 in the classroom organization domain. That is your behavior management, your productivity, your instructional learning formats dimensions. Then a 3, okay, is what grantees should be striving for when it comes to the instructional support domain. That is your concept development, your quality feedback, and your language modeling dimensions. Now you'll notice that there's a huge difference between the first two domains and the instructional support domain, okay? And that is because typically Head Start programs nationwide score anywhere between a 2 and a 3 when it comes to instructional support. So they are taking into consideration the data that they collect through all of the federal reviews, and that's what they used to set these quality thresholds. So they're not setting instructional support at a 6 because it's unrealistic. It's an unrealistic goal to strive for, because typically, like I said, grantees receive a score between a 2 and a 3 for that domain. If as a grantee we receive a score below any one of these quality thresholds of the 663, the Office of Head Start is going to work with us on quality improvement. And what that means is that they will connect us as an agency to a variety of technical assistance resources, trainings that might be out there that align with the area or the domain where we need to show some improvement in, okay? So again, quality thresholds, what OHS is saying, grantees need to strive for, okay? This is best practice. If we don't hit these marks of a 663, they step in and they offer us support. The second piece of the designation renewal system new ruling is what they're calling the competitive thresholds, okay? The competitive thresholds are what can trigger an agency or a grantee to go into competition for their grant, okay? So Children First holds the Head Start and Early Head Start grant for Sarasota County in the state of Florida. Every other county in the state of Florida, okay, has a different agency that holds the grant for that county. In some counties, it's the community action agencies. Some counties, it's the ELC that hold the grant. Other counties, it even could be the school board, okay, that holds the Head Start grant for that county. For Sarasota County, it's us here at Children First. If we do not meet the competitive thresholds, we will have to enter recompetition, which means anybody else in this county, whether it be the school board, an ELC, a community action agency, who would like to take the Head Start grant, okay, we will have to compete against them to keep our grant. That's what that means, okay? So the competitive thresholds can trigger competition for us if we do not meet them. Currently, you can see the competitive thresholds on the screen. They are a little bit lower than the quality thresholds, okay? So the quality thresholds are what we're striving for. It's best practice. The competitive thresholds are the minimum expectations that we have to meet. The Office of Head Start says we must meet these expectations. So for the emotional support domain, it's a 5. For the classroom organization domain, it is also a 5 out of 7. For the instructional support domain, it is currently, until July 31st, 2025, a 2.3. As of August 1st, 2025, it's going to be bumped up to a 2.5. Okay, again, historically nationwide, between a 2 and a 3 is where Head Start programs score. So they set it at a 2.3 to start. They will incrementally be raising that bar, okay, every few years. So it won't always stay between a 2 and a 3. The expectation is that Head Start programs and grantees are going to rise, okay, to better scores every year. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions at all about the quality thresholds or the competitive thresholds? I want to make sure that you guys understand, because we use both of these thresholds to determine the coaching tiers for our classrooms, okay? So this next slide is going to help us take a little bit of a closer look at our agency, Children First, in relation to other national grantee level scores, okay? So what you're looking at, that first chart at the top, are Children First's 2019 class review scores, okay? We were observed during the 2018 year. We got our results in 2019, and as an agency, this was our final scores. So every Head Start classroom that was observed, the average of all of those classrooms was taken, and we get one overall score. We do not get individual classroom scores, okay? So that's the reason why you're not seeing 18 scores. We're only seeing 1. At the time, we had 18 Head Start classrooms, okay? So for the domain of emotional support, we received an overall score of 5.8047. Thinking about the competitive threshold, okay, that's a 5. We were above the competitive threshold of a 5 with a 5.8. For the domain of classroom organization, we also had a score of 5.3125. Again, slightly above the competitive threshold of a 5. However, each of those domains, we did not meet the quality threshold of a 6. So if you remember the quality threshold, emotional support, classroom organization, what we need to strive for is a 6. So although we met the competitive threshold, we did not meet the quality threshold, okay? Again, for the instructional support domain, we received an overall agency score of a 2.6721. We met the competitive threshold, which at this time is a 2.3, okay? We did not, however, meet the quality threshold for instructional support, which is a 3. So we've got some work to do when it comes to class. And that's why we are the ones sharing these results with you, because we are the ones that will be supporting you along with your RMs and your eds, okay, through this process to kind of help support our classrooms show quality improvement, okay? What you're looking at in that next chart are the 2020 statistics. So then in 2019, grantees who fell into their review cycle were observed in 2019 and they got their scores in 2020. These are the most recent scores because reviews did not happen in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, okay? So these are the last scores that were obtained by the Office of Head Start for the federal class review. That first column, you can see all of the domains. The second column shows you the mean or the average of the minimum scores and the maximum scores, okay? So if you look over to the right a little bit, you're gonna see the minimum column and the maximum column. So the minimum is the lowest scores achieved by a grantee, okay, in each of those domains, and the maximum column is the highest scores that were achieved by a grantee for each of those domains. And then they took the average or the mean, and that's what you see in that second column. So for emotional support, the minimum score, okay, that a grantee achieved was a 5.42, excuse me. The maximum score achieved by a grantee or an agency was 6.42. Taking the average of both of those scores, you get a 6.03 for emotional support, okay? So you can see that we fell below the national average score. We had a 5.8047. So again, we've got some work to do together. Classroom organization. The minimum score by a grantee in 2020 was 5.06. The maximum score was a 6.56 out of 7. We got a 5.3125 when we went through our review in 2019. Okay, so unfortunately, the average score in 2020 was a 5.78. We did fall below that. Then we have instructional support, where the minimum score was a 2.11 and the maximum score was a 3.88, the average being a 2.94. We had a 2.6721. So in all three domains, when we were observed in 2019, have fallen below the scores that grantees achieved in 2020. So you can see how the bar is continuously being raised, okay? This is why the Office of Head Start has set those quality and competitive thresholds. So together with your coaches, okay, we are gonna start working to support you guys. We started over the summer by having all of our new pre-K staff or anybody who didn't get an opportunity last year to go through MMCI training. And we will continue to work with you guys in support of quality improvement in our classrooms. Now, we're sharing this information with you, like I said at the beginning. Number one, because we want you to know where we stand and what we have to work on. And we're going to do that together. Number two, because we use this information to tier our classrooms, okay? So before I move on, I'm going to talk about the pre-K, toddler, and infant tiers for this year and how we achieved the criteria, okay, that's going to put classrooms into their individual tiers. Does anybody have any questions at all? I know this is a lot of information to take in. Okay, so I'm going to keep going then. And what you're looking at now is that practice-based coaching pyramid model that you saw at the beginning, okay? Only now it looks a little bit different. We've got some numbers on this slide, okay? And we also have our coaching focus on this pyramid. So again, what you're looking at is the pyramid for pre-K, okay? So at the bottom, you'll see engaging interactions and environments. That's our coaching focus for this year. Last year, our coaching focus for pre-K was the classroom organization domain because of the results from our federal review. This year, we're taking pieces from all 3 domains of the pre-K class tool. All 3 that we went through data, we went through your class scores, we compared them to the competitive and the quality thresholds, and this is how we determined the tier levels, okay? So now when you look at tier 1, you still see, so those are our monthly classrooms. You fall into a tier 1 if your classroom received a 6 or higher for emotional support, a 6 or higher for classroom organization, and a 3 or higher for instructional support. You'll notice that 663, that's the quality threshold, okay? That's what the Office of Head Start says we need to strive for. So only if you were a classroom that scored above those quality thresholds do you start off the school year at a tier 1. Okay, and this was using our internal class observations that occurred, I think Head Start, you guys were done like in the winter time this year, and we used our Children First internal observers. So that's the scores that we utilize to determine your tiers. We move up the pyramid to a tier 2. That's our bi-weekly observations and coaching sessions. If you fell between a 5 and a 5.99 for instructional support, a 5 and a 5.99 for classroom organization, and between a 2.3 and a 3 for instructional support, you will start the year off as a tier 2. Moving up to the top of the pyramid, if you received a 4.99 or lower in either emotional support or classroom organization, and a 2.2 or lower in instructional support, you're going to start off the year as a tier 3. And I say start off the year because tiers can change, okay, on a variety of factors. It could be the teachers that are working together. It could be the children or the behaviors that you have in your classroom. We know there's so many things that can affect a class score when you're being observed. So just because you start the year off at a particular tier doesn't mean that's where you're going to remain for the entire school year, okay? In October, Teachstone is going to be coming out and conducting full class observations, 4 cycle observations in our classrooms. And then once the coaches get that data, it could redetermine your tier, okay, either up or down. And we do that because we want to make sure that you're constantly getting the level of support that you need, okay? So it could be ever changing. Any questions about the pre-K tiers, how they were determined? If you are unsure of your tier, okay, when you were given your class feedback, we were responsible for that this year. So we met with every classroom on our caseload. If you were observed, you got your feedback from your coach. And at that time, I believe we all told you what tier you were going to fall in for the new school year. But if for some reason you're unsure, you know, you can reach out to one of us and ask, and we can let you know. If you are a brand new lead teacher to Children First this year, first of all, welcome, we're happy to have you. And second of all, you will fall into a tier 2. Okay, so you're going to start off in that mid-level because we don't have any data on you, right? So we're going to put you there in that mid-level. And then once we get those scores back in October, once we spend some time in your classroom and get a feel for how things are going, your tier might change up or down as well. Okay. So I saw, Katrina, that you made a comment that you guys didn't get your scores, and I saw Kelly write that down, just so you know. All right, so if there's no questions about the pre-K pyramid, I'm going to move on to toddler. And our toddler pyramid, okay, also has the same coaching focus for toddlers this year as well as infants. We're going to be working on those engaging interactions and environments. We know that the class tool is based on interactions, okay? Now, because EHS does not participate in the designation renewal system, we did not use the competitive or the quality thresholds to determine the tiers for toddler or infant. What we used were our highest and lowest internal individual classroom scores, okay? So what that means is if a classroom, we had classrooms here at Children First toddler classrooms that scored a 6 or higher, okay, in the emotional domain for the toddler tool. Again, I should have stated, for those of you that don't know, the toddler tool only has 2 domains, okay? There's the domain that houses the emotional and behavioral, and then there's the domain that houses the instructional and facilitation, okay? So if you got a 6 or higher in the emotional and a 4.4 or higher in the instructional, your classroom will start the year off at a tier 1. If you received between a 4.2 and a 5.99 in emotional and a 2.6 and a 3.99 for the instructional, your classroom will start off the year at a tier 2. Moving up the pyramid, if you got a 4.1 or lower in the emotional and a 2.5 or lower in the instructional, your classroom will start off at a tier 3 this school year. Okay, and again, these are using our internal scores. I want to say for EHS, you guys were observed in the spring, probably about 50% of the classrooms. Because of what was going on with COVID, it was difficult for some observers to get into some classrooms. Classrooms were combined, teachers were quarantined, whatever it is that was going on kind of hindered our observers getting into some EHS classrooms this spring. So we carried those observations through the summer session, right? So currently we're still working on some of the EHS data and determining where those classrooms observed over the summer are going to fall in regards to the tiers. So if you did not yet get your class feedback or your tier, and you know you were observed, don't stress out, just know that that's coming, okay? You will be soon finding out what tier you fall into, okay? Any questions about the toddler pyramid? Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the infant pyramid. Again, you see engaging interactions and environments, our coaching focus at the base of the pyramid. The infant tool only has one domain, and that is responsive caregiving. So if a classroom, an infant classroom, got a 6 or higher in that particular domain, they are going to start off the school year at a tier 1. Any classrooms that received a 3.6 and to a 5.99 will start off the school year at a tier 2. And then any classroom that got a 3.5 or below in the responsive caregiving domain is going to be starting the school year off at a tier 3. Okay, so EHS will also be receiving class observations. We haven't determined exactly yet when that's going to happen. It will be with our Children First in-house observers, okay? So we have a lot of people on staff that are reliable class observers. The 3 of us sitting here right now are reliable class observers, as are all of the RMs and EDs. So again, Head Start, we're contracting with Teachstone because we want to make sure that we're truly getting unbiased, accurate scores. It's a little different. The pressure is a little bit higher for our pre-K classrooms, you know, because they take part in the federal review. So early Head Start, we're going to be using our internal observers, and they'll probably happen at some point in, I'm thinking between like winter time. So you guys will also be observed. Any questions about any of the pyramids, how your tiers were determined? competitive or quality thresholds. If you come up with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email addresses will be posted at the end of the training here. So, okay, let's see, does your score, hold on a second, I saw that question pop up. Let me go back to it. All right, so does your score follow you from EHS to HS or vice versa? So it does not. So if you were in a Head Start classroom last year and you moved to an early Head Start classroom this year, we consider that as having no data, okay? So just like a new teacher, you would fall into a tier 2. And it's the same vice versa. If you were in an early Head Start classroom and you're moving to a Head Start classroom, we have no Head Start data on you. You'll start off at a tier 2, okay? Until observations occur, your coach gets in, starts doing observations, and then we'll see if that tier needs to be adjusted. That was a good question. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on to talk a little bit about our coaching focus for this school year? Okay, all right. I don't see anything, so Lauren is going to talk to us about our coaching focus.
Yes. So when thinking about our PVC model, and we're going to work towards building and practicing our effective teaching practices, we want to look at the framework for effective practice. And you'll see the blue block at the bottom is engaging interactions and environment. And essentially, it is the foundation for all learning in early childhood classrooms. Hence, it is our coaching focus for this upcoming program year. So we'll break it down into 2 parts. So engaging interactions are essentially the back and forth exchanges among teachers and children, as well as children and their peers. And when you think about when can you perform these engaging interactions, it can happen from the moment they step in the classroom to the moment that they leave for the day. Then we also want to look at our engaging environment. And your environment is where the children are learning and spending time throughout the day. This could be in the classroom. The most common environment we have for the children is the classroom. And inside the classroom, we want to look at the types of materials that we have for them, the different types of books we have to offer for them, as well as the furnishings in the classroom to make sure that they're child friendly and that they can access the materials in the classroom, as well as the room arrangement, if it's in accordance to if it's developmentally appropriate for the children, and if it's appropriate just for the function of the classroom. We also want to look at the engaging environment of outside, so your playground. How engaging are you creating your outside time with the kids? For early Head Start teachers, when you are getting observed, the observer will follow you outside. This is different than Head Start. So you want to make sure you're engaging the children outside and they have something where they can learn and you can engage with them in their play. And we also want to look at the staff placement and how you're zone defensing in the classroom and outside. Then essentially interactions and environments are engaging when they support the children's involvement in activities that promote positive development and learning. And essentially they are the foundation to development across the areas of the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework, class, and the Florida standards.
All right, so now that you've got a little bit of insight into our coaching focus for this year, Colleen is going to kick off talking to you a little bit about the process, that PVC cycle, and the first part of that is planning your goals.
So the way that we start out is through asking you all to complete a needs assessment. And that's where you're going to do a little bit of self-reflection and evaluation on different skills and practices that you have implemented in the classroom. Initially, when we were going to meet in person, we were going to be looking at the needs assessment today with you. So giving it to you, having you complete it so that we're there to answer questions as you go along. Since we are now virtual, what we'll do is we will bring the needs assessment to you within the next few weeks as you start in the classroom. Along with the needs assessment, we'll also bring in your coaching folder a survey so that we can get an idea of your experience with coaching. We'll bring a document that kind of talks a little bit about your learning style, and then another piece that looks at some of the things that you like most. It's a getting to know you kind of a document. So the needs assessment is where it all starts. And as you can see on this slide, on the left-hand side, there'll be a list of very specific practices. And then what you will do is kind of evaluate and reflect on your own practices in the classroom. Think a little bit about how often you're doing it, the frequency, the quality, the depth. If you want to do it more, how confident you might be, if you would like to extend the use of that practice to different times of day. And then on the left, you can see there's some abbreviations. So there's an RSP and a BM. So those are to show you reference to where this practice falls within the class tool. The needs assessment that you'll get will also include references to the early learning framework and also the Florida standards. The next piece that we'll look at when we meet will be a coaching agreement. And what that is a list of different commitments. There are commitments that you as the coachee are going to commit to, commitments that I will commit to, the rest of we as coaches will commit to, and then also the supervisors. So there's a list of things that we're asking supervisors to commit to as well. And we'll go over those with you when we meet with you initially.
Then we have our action plan, and essentially the coaches, your coach and yourself will be looking at your needs assessment. And on your needs assessment, you will also prioritize 3 main teaching practices that you would want to focus on during the program year. From those 3, you will collaboratively pick one with your co-teacher to start working on, and we will create that teaching practice into a goal. And a goal is something that is clearly defined, measurable, and achievable within a specified time frame. So essentially, you'll work with your coach in terms of, okay, you have this teaching practice. What about it do you want to practice in the classroom? What time of day do you feel that you need a little bit more support with this? How many times or with how many children are you going to practice this goal? It's very clearly defined and measurable, so the coaches can come in and see exactly what you're doing to provide you with feedback. Goals provide accountability, so that's why we create them together, as well as allows opportunity to celebrate success. Goals are very small. We create them very small just so we can celebrate your success. Even if it's one step that you guys have achieved towards your goal, we will celebrate that with you. And as we're creating goals, we will outline different action steps that you will need to take in order to achieve your overall goal. Then after we've set your action plan go ahead. After we've completed your action plan and your goal, you've specified a time for when you want to practice this goal. This is when your coach would come in to conduct your focused observation. And typically focused observations take around 30 minutes, depending on what it is. If it's something in terms of like a transition time, then it may take a little bit shorter. But essentially they're typically 30 minutes, and the coach will come in and look only at the goal that you have set that you want to practice in your classroom. So we're not looking for anything else outside of the goal that you have already set with your coach. After the focused observation, you'll come out of the classroom and meet with your coach to have a reflection and feedback session or a coaching session. And this is your opportunity to reflect with your coach on how you felt the observation went, and also receive some feedback from your coach. Receive some feedback from your coach based off of what we have observed in the classroom, and we'll brainstorm some ways of how you can continue to grow and work towards meeting your goal. With the reflection and feedback, remember, it's a cyclical process. So if we're feeling like something that they're practicing is not working, we do brainstorm and think about different action steps that may need to be taken. Or if your goal is too lofty, of breaking down your goal in order to, so you can achieve your overall goal.
Okay, thank you. So, one of the last things that we're going to talk about is our timeline for PVC. So we created a timeline for the year of when things pertaining to coaching are going to occur. So right now what we're looking at are the next few months and what's going to be happening as far as practice-based coaching. So we're in the month of August right now. You guys have your first day of school on Tuesday. We don't immediately jump in and start coaching, okay? So in the month of August, your early childhood coach will at some point visit your classroom. We want to get acquainted with any new staff. We conduct informal observations, so you might see us come in with a notepad and a pen, and it's just because we want to get, you know, some notes and an overall feel for the environment of your classroom, the kids, you know, the things that we see going on. We will also, during the month of August, bring you your coaching folder. Kelly talked about before the things that are housed in that folder, your needs assessment, the coaching survey, a little questionnaire, get to know you type questions. Depending on how set and secure our classrooms are, we know that there's still some changes going on. As far as classroom room assignments, we know some classrooms are opening the school year with subs in there. So until the classroom teaching team is finalized, we're going to hold on to those needs assessments. When we know that your classroom is set, that's when we will leave your coaching folders with you, because we don't want anybody wasting time filling out needs assessments and then they're not going to stay in that classroom. Right? So at some point during the month of August, you'll get your coaching folder. Next, you'll see class in action was going to occur in the month of August. So class in action was going to be a training, okay, to offer support for our tier 1 and tier 2 classrooms. Okay, this was pre-K only. So currently, like I said before, any new staff that was recently hired or didn't get to go through MMCI last year went through these 2 weeks of pre-service, okay? Our tier 3 classrooms also participated in MMCI, even if they took it prior, okay? It was a refresher. It was for them to, you know, get another level of support. And so they joined the MMCI sessions this summer. But then we also want to offer a level of support to our tier 1 and tier 2 classrooms as well. So we created a training called Class in Action, and we were going to start that on August 10th, the first day of school. But because, again, of the instability of classrooms, and we're not quite certain that everyone is in their correct classroom right now, changes are still being made, teachers are being shuffled around, you know, going between early Head Start still not decided. We don't want to start just yet because we don't want to waste anybody's time. We don't want somebody to start and then they're moved to an early Head Start classroom. Or we don't want somebody to start and then, you know, they have a new co-teacher. So until everything is a little bit more stable, we're going to put that on hold. We're looking at hopefully starting that following the 45th day of school. Okay. In the month of September, we kick off with our initial coaching meetings, and that is where you will have about an hour to an hour and a half of time secured with your coach. You will meet to discuss your goals. We'll take a look at your needs assessments in relation to your class scores, if you have scores from last year. We'll take all of that information into consideration and work with you to select your top 3 goals. Okay, then out of those top 3 goals, we'll talk together and you guys will decide what the first goal that you want to work on is going to be. We will then at that same meeting create your very first action plan. So you will have your action plan with your goal, your action steps, exactly what you're going to practice, okay, in order to achieve that goal in ample time before PVC officially kicks off, which is October 4th, okay, which is also following the 45th day. So that is a Monday following the 45th day. We will have set schedules that we're going to come out, visit your classrooms, depending on whether you're a monthly, a bi-weekly, or a weekly classroom. Our schedules aren't finalized just yet. Again, because of the shift in staff, we don't know exactly yet what classrooms are, you know, what tier. And so our schedules will be finalized when things become a little bit more stable. And you will know, you know, when we're going to be coming out. So October 4th, it kicks off. Your coach will let you know when your first observation is going to be. And then also in the month of October, like I mentioned earlier, we are going to have pre-K class observations at that time. Teach-Don't observers are contracted. Contract's already signed. It's already on the calendar. They're going to start, I believe, about the 3rd week of October. Okay, coming out and doing 4 complete cycle class observations in all of our Head Start classrooms. Okay. Again, once we get that data, then you'll get feedback from your coach. There might be some discussion about your tier. It may change, right? And then we'll go from there. Okay. So currently, this is the information that we want you to know. Early Head Start, as soon as we find out about your observations, of course, we'll get that information to you. So at this time, before we say goodbye, does anybody have any other thoughts, comments, questions? Again, you can email us if you know who your coach is going to be. You can email your coach. I can be reached at alows@childrenfirst.net. Lauren can be reached at lwilliams@childrenfirst.net. And Colleen can be reached at kcarpenter@childrenfirst.net. And we all just want to thank you very much for your time and attention this morning. We're super excited to get out there and start working with you guys. And we all hope that you have a fantastic first day of school on Tuesday. You might even see your coach on Tuesday. We'll be walking around, popping into classrooms, seeing how you guys are doing, you know, just to say hi. So thank you again very much for your time. Anybody want to add anything?
Nope, you got it.
Super excited.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon.